Hi and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will bring you a wealth of interesting people with fascinating ideas across the tech industries, the creative industries, and also uplifting stories of courage and hope. We all go through prickly situations in life. I believe that through courage, creativity, and curiosity, you can find inspiration to nurture your zest. That thing that gets you up and out of bed every morning, the thing that lifts you up and lights up your day. So join me in the studio and let's see who we have in the hot seat today. Today I have a very special guest in the hot seat next to me. It's Charlie Hoult. I've been waiting to interview Charlie for a very long time because I am so excited about his journey as a business leader. So without further ado, here's Charlie.
Thank you very much for having me. Hot it is.
It is. It's a privilege to have you here. Charlie, for those who've never met you before, who is Charlie Hoult?
So I'm a Newcastle businessman. I'm the fourth generation in a family business which bears my surname, Hoult's. We had a family furniture removal business that bought in 1948 a Pottery, not very far from here. And that has been transformed from finishing the pottery in 1960s to providing storage and then business units. And now with the kind of WeWork of Newcastle, we have 10 acres of real estate and 100 plus businesses that rent space. We have meeting rooms, we have gyms, we have donut bakeries, we have breweries. It's a thriving little hub on the east side of the city centre. And alongside that, I have fingers in pies with a number of different businesses that I have started. A tech business called Opencast Software, a recruitment business in London called Future Heads, an insurance business called Cheviot, which with the team, I was a small shareholder. And all of that in 2019 culminated in me having a very short 6-week political career, trying to be the mayor of Newcastle. And I'm proud of being the runner-up in that election for the Conservative Party.
And you did a great job in that election. I remember watching it avidly, trying to see who would be chosen and how it would develop. And I commend your courage as well doing that. That must have been quite a big, well, what was that like actually?
So it was fascinating as a marketing person to market yourself, which was a sort of rare thing, sort of brand Charlie. And
choose Charlie.
First, yes, choose Charlie. I have that.com.
Yes, I remember hearing.
Yeah. I thought that was probably not the best, because of the connotations with Charlie as a short
drug
name for cocaine.
Yes.
So I used Vote Hoult, which
Hoult
was the alliterative half rhyme of those two words and then we did a load of social. And so that was all really fascinating to be the product. And the challenge when you're marketing, voting and candidacy in the UK is the budget for 600,000 voters was £40,000, including VAT. So you don't get a lot of money, so you have to be quite creative. And that was part of the challenge and fun of the project.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I remember all of the stuff going on around that time and being so avidly hooked on everything in the news and trying to see what would happen. And I remember actually with your campaign, you were very clever. You did newsprint, if I recall,
yes.
Which is a great way to save some cash, but reach more people as well, which I think is really powerful.
My leafleters still hate me though.
Do they?
They like a stiff card that goes through a letterbox. And the newsprint, even when rolled up, it bent on those springy letterboxes around Northumberland.
So it's interesting though in terms of newsprint, because I think for me that's a metaphor about you. Let me explain. So you have a journalism background and you love words and I love words. So we're great to lots to chat about there. But I think when I think of Charlie Hoult personally, what do I think? Well, I know you've won lots of awards and I know of you as a business leader, but I actually think of the word maverick. So I've been reflecting on this. What do I want to ask Charlie? And I actually see you as a very creative individual and an innovator. Those are the two words, I think, maverick and innovation. A lot of people talk about innovation, they say they're innovating, but I think Hoult's Yard is a testament to innovation. So ahead of the curve, before people were doing hot desking or co-working, you've been doing that for a long time. As you said, you've curated a business village. Did you say around 400 businesses?
About 100 odd.
100 odd.
Yeah, there's maybe 700 people.
Exactly.
Jobs dependent on the Hoult's Yard.
But the benefit that brings to our region, to our economy, and then all of the other projects you're involved in, Dymo, the tech sector, you do a lot locally. So I do think, for me, when I think of you, maverick is the label that comes up. And I wanted to ask you, what does that word mean to you? If you think maverick, what do you think?
So I think it's a compliment.
It sure is. No, it is a compliment.
I mean, some might say disruptor and disruptive. Some might say Marmite. And but I think you've got to be quite grounded to be able to push those boundaries. And I think I'm interested in differentiation. That's the key to marketing cut through. You've got to be different.
Yeah.
And in returning to the Northeast, when my business in London slightly bumped in the credit crunch and I got fired by the venture backers, I was wanting to come back and have cut through in a property business that was the family business, and to think, I was drawn into, I went to boarding school age 13. I came back here when I was 43. I'd never really worked in the region. I didn't have a network, but I understood the power of networking. And so I wanted to try and get deal flow for our properties, as in people who wanted to rent offices. And so you have to double quick get networked. And so I run a property business, but I'm not a property guy. I'm a marketing guy. And it was about, how do you present space in a different way? And what are the innovative ways to do that? And so I'm a horizon scanner. I'm looking at the next thing. I'm looking at the future. I have a few businesses that I rep for, and I'm just inquisitive about how the models work and stuff.
So that makes me curious. So you sound like a lot like me. You like to be a visionary or be creative and come up with ideas, but then are you a details person, or do you leave that to somebody else?
I'm like a money person. Entrepreneurs, they want to make history and make money, and the money bit is to provide security, because I think in my early inner psychology, I was in a family business that was very up and down, and so I want to try and find security in fixing something to make a product or a service in society that is going to be sustainable. Yeah. And I don't know whether that's how you balance all those things, but it kind of, worrying about the downside risk is something that is in my gut feel, and the response of that, the energy that it creates to try and work through issues and challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've had a unique experience growing up because you are fourth generation business. But then when I've heard you talking about this before, it's not just like you were handed the keys to the kingdom and it's super easy. You've got to consider legacy decisions or contracts or cash flow challenges or any of those things that any business owner has. But you've also got the spotlight on you for your family name and that legacy. So I think that is a challenge, and I can see that having to kind of horizon scan and always look at risk and see what's coming up, but also the fun things. So when we look at pestle analysis or any of those strategic models, the macro factors are really important. I think we're in a really exciting time globally, but also scary time, looking at some of the stuff in the news and thinking about that horizon scanning and how it will affect us. I think that's really interesting. But
nothing lasts.
Yes.
You meet generations, and I'm kind of obsessed with the next generations. And how do you get I've got 4 children. How do we get them to have their own way in the world and curiosity and challenge and that Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing of self-actualization? I can't do it for them. They've got to do it themselves. But how do you want to can you do some perpetuating, some keeping of your own family at a certain level, and how do you float other boats with all of that?
And this is where I guess the old adage of charity begins at home as well, and philanthropy is in supporting the people around you. You can help them to rise. So one of the things I love that you say is that you're a capitalist, but you're about creating value. So with capitalism, or with wealth creation or value creation, we're creating oxygen or a way for resources to travel in our communities.
Yes.
And if you look at the impact of what you've done at Hoult's Yard and your other projects, particularly Opencast, actually, if we could talk about Opencast for a couple of minutes, because the value that's created by Opencast to help different communities that might be marginalized through disability, neurodiversity, or age, for instance. If we talk about financial inclusion, if there may be people who can't access certain apps or fintech products, for instance, but we know we want to be a cashless society, there's a lot that Opencast is doing to challenge these issues and advocate for a lot of people. So I think that it's really important actually to think about some of that work you have been part of. Can you tell us a bit about the Opencast journey and the wicked problems that Opencast is solving?
Sure. I'd start though by, I've been reading and listening to a lot of a guy called Peter Thiel.
Right.
He's PayPal mafia, worked with Elon Musk, first investor in Facebook.
Right.
And he did a course at Stanford around how to start a business.
Right.
And it was a book written of the notes it's called 0 to 1.
Right.
And I think the fascinating thing about being a starter-upper of businesses, which is the fact in the title, is either you have nothing, 0, or you have something. And I think as our region and a nation and, the future, it's important for people to start something. And that commitment to make something, to do something, has been innate for me. I'm always, we talked a little bit before joining that I was in a band. I was terrible at the saxophone, but I was really good at organising. I got the gigs. I got everyone there. They were brilliant. We had, and I'm always, there's that phrase, we sat on the cliff, we looked, should we jump off? We jumped off and we flew. If you commit to something, then it's in the committing that great actions happen.
Yeah.
And if more people get out of their comfort zone and do stuff that is new, I think that may be the vitamin of my maverickness, vitamin M, that you get addicted to just pushing and trying.
Yeah.
And then you get better. Your producer colleague talking about, there is a way with podcasts. The more you get into it, then you realize that, how the jigsaw pieces fit together, and we can be better at it. And so, I'm always doing that. And Opencast is one of several businesses that I've started, and following something of a playbook, it has done well. Yeah, right place, right time, or, we were, good. And so I came back from London. I met Mike, my co-founder, and we both had twins at the same school, and everyone else were lawyers and doctors. And we were there. Occasionally we were in smart suits, and occasionally we were in jeans and Converse trainers, and realized that we both had the same sort of perspective in tech. And I sort of thought he would be a really interesting guy to back and work together. And I engineered a charity walk where we walked around Kielder, which is a long way. It's 26 miles. Kielder is like the size of Manhattan. You can walk around it, and chatted and sort of pitched the idea, socialized the idea that maybe we could set up a tech business, consulting, and we're now like 12, 15 years later, and we've got around 500 people in the business. And so the journey was, how can we do corporate tech consulting in the Northeast? Who can we work with? Can we North Shore for financial services in London? Can we work with government? Can we sub with other tech businesses? And we tried all of those things. We got traction within HMRC, who have a digital delivery centre in the Northeast. And we subbed for Accenture. We collaborated. We worked in teams. And cutting a long story short, 7 or 8 years in that delivery centre, the pandemic hit, and our team was in all sorts of places across the digital delivery centre. Maybe we had 40, 50 people working in there, and we helped with the development of the pandemic response, particularly the freelance furlough, which is the self-employed income support. And Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, was on the telly, the Treasury team were on the Zoom, and the team at HMRC, including our guys, was on the Zoom as well. And because we had worked with they called it a scaffolding, Imagine, Meccano, Lego, jigsaw pieces, we knew the Lego pieces that they were talking, when they said, right, we want the system to work with these people, we knew the Lego pieces to put together, and then could quickly assemble those and add any new pieces so that it was tested inside the scaffolding and then out very quickly and worked. And, definition of success, those pandemic response furlough schemes were not in the papers for breaking down and leaving people high and dry without money. There was fears that people would be very, very stressed if the money stopped coming in for people's livelihoods. And so, we were part of that.
Which is incredible, actually, across multiple open cost projects, because making tax digital, I believe that's the right phrase.
Yes.
But the work that I've seen as a business owner going onto the HMRC website and being able to use it, I'm neurodiverse. I have some struggles with maths and numbers, and actually I find it a pleasure going on the website. It's so easy to use.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for all of the work that's gone into user experience design and the constant tweaks and fixes. So
yes.
I have to say I'm a huge fan of the work that OpenCast has done across many projects. And I know that's just so wide and growing all the time, with goals to be 1,000 soon. Is that right?
So I have to say that we are supporters of the government stuff.
Yes.
We can't claim anything on our own, because we have amazing government civil service contacts that we are supporting in the mission. And a lot of the departments that we're in have been very visionary with their technology, and it is a evolving piece. Sometimes we are supporting maintaining existing systems. Sometimes we are working with an offshoot. Sometimes we're working with complete revolution with a system that needs to be rewritten, or sometimes we're working with a government service that's a piece of paper that becomes attached to, and a system in the cloud. The sort of secret to our success has been that we've been always very open with our team, and we have hired from all sorts of diverse backgrounds, and we're very aware of the different dimensions of diversity, whether that's gender, you talk about neurodiversity, sexuality, country of origin, English as a first language, reading ability, eyesight, other disabilities or different diffabilities, hearing and stuff. And our main client these days is the UK government and the citizens who are the clients of the Department of Work and Pensions, whether it's benefits or bereavement. We talked about age. We cover those bases in a way where we can be questioning about the brief to make sure that the actual response tries to dial in all those accessibility and diversity issues. And that, coupled with our ability to respond very, very quickly to things like the pandemic, have meant that we've got a good reputation in government, and we're doing things that are very supportive and impactful in delivering the projects, and also in the wider aspects of social impact, that we do as an organisation. And they are heartfelt, post-grown, because we were like 80 people before the pandemic, and then in successive years, 200, 400, 500. It's not like, have you got a culture? Let's go and add a culture. It's been organic and evolving, and it's really powerful.
It is powerful. Yeah. It's powerful to watch. And I'm so curious looking at that, zooming out to 2019. You talked about how you went for the Mayoral Campaign. You did the 6-week campaign, and then you were the runner-up. And I wonder now about your feelings on that, because if you were...
Relief.
But if you had been the mayor that time of North of the Tyne, or I know it's changed names recently, but what I was going to say is, would you have been able to show up for Opencast in the way that was maybe needed during the pandemic? How would that have changed that?
It would have been impossible.
Yeah.
One of the things that I kind of realised in the campaign was how conflicted you are if you're a candidate with wider interests, because people always join the dots, and it was very conflicting to feel to people. People think all politicians are corrupt, and they join. They make 1 + 1 = 5. They assume corrupt, lining your own pockets, gonna advocate for programs that are in your best interests or self-interest. And so I didn't have any of my team at work working on my campaign. I was completely separate to that, and it helped my head in the campaign, because the abuse that you get online, the sort of Brexit mad dog stuff, is you can brush it off. But when people say, oh, he's lining his own pockets, or like some people said, oh, he's inherited everything, he doesn't really work, no wonder he can be a candidate, when I feel like I'm very hardworking, and I'm like, not only do I work hard, but I max my productivity usage of tech so that I can show up for 4 people rather than just half a person on stuff. That was the bits that made me and my wife cry, was people who were just sort of kind of evil and incessant, popping up on Twitter, and then you block them on Twitter and they'd come on LinkedIn, and then they, come on Facebook with the same kind of you're evil, which was a bit unfair to, anyone in public service who has all of that, and people who are doing it for, you've got to say 99% of people are doing it for the best motives.
I have to commend your courage again for going for a position like that, because I am quite shy in lots of ways, and I struggle sometimes. I love my podcast. I love chatting to people. I love the impact of conversations, and it's wonderful to have people listening all over the world. But I do think the pressure that would come with such a public profile to go for a role like that, I don't know how you did it. So I really do take my hat off to you. And I just think you had tremendous courage. I heard
Melinda Gates on the radio, pre-podcast world, talking about how important it is play in society and to do a role in society that is commensurate to the advantages that you've got. And it is one of the challenges of public service and public life, being a politician, that not everybody can cut. Like, not everyone can afford to just cut everything and be a politician.
Absolutely.
And you may be in work in a career world where you can't just switch it off and go and do politics. More's the pity, and the money is not great for the amount of 24/7, 365 engagement that people now have that they
and
can
expect
hit
of their
on
politicians.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for anyone emerging in the public eye or going through that journey from that lesson that you would share?
I think the British system is very different to the American system, and it is quite a calling to do that. It's like the priesthood or whatever, you've got to have a calling for all of that, such that it moves you to want to do public service.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a vow of poverty that you will have a career that's very engaging, but may not, the money isn't, the progression for money isn't great.
Yeah.
I think that we should consider the Singaporean model, where there is much more, there are fewer politicians with much more money. If you're in the cabinet in Singapore, you're on $1 million. And some of politics in Singapore, you get paid on results as well, which is positive impact for the wider society, and also stops the need for having payment by interest groups that sort of support the payroll for British politicians.
Of course.
Yeah.
I absolutely think it would be, for me, if there was an ideal world, I think paying on results. I think I
think the challenge in politics is you're addressing things as the person of last line of support, etc. So some of the stuff that politicians, Westminster, wherever, are trying to do are the things that no one else wants to do, and that are extremely challenging, and that are the sort of blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at our producer here from the States to ask for some stats, because we have 660 members of Parliament in the UK. I'm not expecting you to know the number of Lords, but there are probably 800 Lords. How many are in Congress and how many are in the Senate? In America is, we're 60 something million, there's 330 million. We're going to have to go to Google, but I think there's something like 250 senators, 250 in Congress for a country that is that's 6 times the size. And so there are many less. I'm just saying that's on a simple piece on numbers. There are many less senior governance politicians in the US than even in the UK for a 5 times smaller country. And so that would be how you get turkeys to vote for Christmas. It is a challenge. And going on to regional government, I think our mayor and the mayoralty and the combined authority is a positive in the scales of, I haven't thought of a better analogy than Russian dolls. We've got Westminster, then you go down to parish council and city council, and the regional mayor is a good stepping stone to that.
Absolutely.
And having that, as I can see why the administration wanted to put that sort of mid-sized authority in, and getting momentum in that is positive. And that was the role that I stood for, and I'm still very interested in performance of that. My slogan was projects, not politics. And I stand by that as a region, the more good, impactful projects that we can tee up, the better.
Absolutely. So I actually think you're doing that already, Charlie. You've been advocating for the region nationally and internationally, and you continue to do that. So I think your slogan is very apt there. So as a man who loves words, Charlie, who is your favorite writer?
So I when I was at uni and before, I really liked Louis MacNeice and Bruce Chatwin. I have spent last year reading everything from Bernard Cornwell, and I, in terms of words, I absolutely love podcasts now. I live out in Hexham, and so I have like 35, 40 minutes, and I listen to The Rest is History. I've pretty much done and do every one of theirs. They have, and it's the creativity from the podcast medium, which is fantastic. And I recently discovered the All In podcast, which is tech bros in the US. And I think the medium for me is that on-air chemistry, the live wit and the, being there. And I was talking earlier about the All In podcast where they were live kind of as Trump was signing executive orders on his first day in office. And one of the podcasters had become Trump's head of crypto, and he was actually in the room. They cut to live the Oval Office and Trump signing the order with his Sharpie. David Sachs leaves the room and then dials in to the podcast. I mean, and there's a sort of moment for radio, for podcasting, that is how the immediacy of that, how important to get views straight out of the Oval Office. It makes you feel like you're kind of there with it all. And that medium can be Oval Office, or it can be Flamingo Heights in Byker.
It could be Flamingo Heights.
And it's thrilling to be able to get into people's heads in a way, long form, that we couldn't really before.
This is something we find fascinating, just on that note around advertising. So the stats with podcast advertising are that people prefer it to TV. They're more likely to go and follow a Facebook page or your social accounts, or go and buy something, or tell a colleague or friend or whatever about whatever you're listening to, because people have such an intimate experience with podcasts. You hearing them in your home at 3 a.m. while you're doing chores, or tinkering with whatever you do. And so it's really interesting to hear which writers you like. I've just discovered Louise Ross, LJ Ross, who's a crime writer locally. And oh my gosh, I'm so glued to all of her work, which is good. But it's really scary because it's all of our local landmarks. So I've never found those types of books very scary. But I think when they're talking about the Armstrong tunnels, the Victoria tunnels, or talking about the Lees's wing of the RVI, when you hearing specific places that it can be a little bit scary, but it's nice to read a local author. So I have one big question for you, Charlie. So what is your number one word to nurture your zest?
Manifest.
It
was word of the year 2024.
Right.
But from, I think, the Cambridge English Dictionary.
Okay.
But yes, that we talked about, jump off the cliff, find that you can fly. Manifesting is a way to nurture that zest.
Wow.
To keep your vibe.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that? So some people might say manifesting is a bit woo-woo. What's your approach with manifesting? Do you visualize every day how you want it to go, how you want conversations to go? What's your approach to manifesting? How do you do it?
I don't have a great visual. But I am, purpose, visualize, win is a bit of a catchphrase in our house. And I think it's just, I am a bit woo-woo. I'm big on yoga. We've got a new yoga Studio 108 in Hoult's Yard.
Right.
And it is practically in the dark. It's with amazing, chanting and music and some quite hip New York house. And I'm there doing my breathing.
I'll have to come down.
You must.
I love a bit of woo-woo too. So.
Yes. So I mean, I think it is. If you feel these things deeply, and So yeah, I mean, you did talk about sort of mental health in prepping me for this, and I have a very pint overflowing rather than half empty view, and it's just bashing through. I write lists, yes, I have some kind of long-term vision of one day I'll be able to stop work. One day I'll have safe psychological and financial safety. And it's just, but you've got to manifest that. You've got to, that's an extrovert. You say this is what you're going to do, and that helps with where it can go. And I suppose in my mind, as an extrovert who says things to try and make sense of the things in my head, I'm also sufficiently spinning those that maybe it's ADHD. I'm out there, that one, I'm locking on, but I can kill it off as well and go for the next thing, start it, initiate. And some people kind of catch me, are you still doing that? No, I killed that long ago. But yeah, it's trying to find things that are going to get traction. It's
the horizon scanning and being able to quickly go, this is going to work, this is not, I'm going to switch my attention, which I think is great.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to Nurture Your Zest today. If you're feeling extra kind, it would mean so much to me if you could share this episode with your friends or family or anyone who you think might feel inspired by this content. Liking, sharing, or interacting with our content is a great way to support us as content creators, and it helps us to bring interesting stories and more people to you. This podcast is a Flamingo Heights podcast studio production, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. If you liked today's episode, follow the video on your screen now, or check out the link in your show notes to find similar content.